So to access the untapped resources we have in Europe in aluminium, we need policies. One of these policies is the Critical Raw Materials Act. Paul, can you run us through the main benefits?
Well, firstly, I think it's important that the European Union, companies, consumers, everyone has a shared view on what is critical raw materials and what is not critical raw materials. And then when you have a material which is recognized, there will also be soft targets related to how much should be produced within the European Union, and also potential soft funding mechanisms further out in time.
There are several legal instruments that we can use, and several of them are on transparency and traceability.
These new regulations are important to drive sort of the most sustainable aluminium to win in the market. For example, if we talk about green claims, I think that will be important to drive and ensure that the most sustainable raw material suppliers win in the market. When it comes to, for example, waste shipment, I think that is another important area that will support a development where we keep more of the scrap in the market in Europe and recycle that as a raw material in Europe.
And then we have a third piece of legislation which taps into both waste shipments and also recycling in a growth segment for aluminium, which is the end-of-life vehicles regulation. How do you see that playing in?
No, this is also a key regulation for me. And you know, one way to improve recycling is really when you already in the design phase of a new product, design with the end of life and the recycling in mind. So to ensure that the degradation of the materials in the recycling phase is reduced.
But Paul, not every piece of legislation will necessarily help recycling rates. And how do you see the carbon border adjustment mechanism fitting into this recycling landscape?
Well, as a starting point to create a level playing field, price or penalize the emissions of carbon and ensuring that it's more competitive to have low emissions is good. Today we have several mechanisms in place which target to create that level playing field. And these will gradually be replaced by CBAM. Trond Olav had a very good description earlier of the differences between post and pre-consumer scrap and the difference in footprint there, where post-consumer scrap carries 0 and pre-consumer scrap carries a footprint which is closer to the production of primary. And if you don't treat the different scrap streams in that manner, you risk the regulations having the exact opposite effect as they should have. And that's the starting point for CBAM now when it comes to recycling. We see that there is no separation between these two product categories. Sitting as a company outside Europe, you can in theory export your pre-consumed scrap, which carries a higher footprint, into Europe and be taxed as a 0 footprint source of scrap. And it's actually quite surprising that we are in this position where this is proposed, because it's a very easy concept to understand. In theory, given how the market looks today, where the customer is actually willing to pay a higher premium for post-consumer scrap than pre-consumer scrap due to the low footprint, you could have companies outside Europe aiming to generate as much scrap as possible in the pre-phase and then exporting that into Europe and getting a higher premium than they would typically on exporting primary aluminium or another source of metal. So this is a massive hole in the regulation, which could have a very negative effect for European industry in total on the recycling side, if not closed. There will be more CBAM discussions to come, and to ensure that each and every one is handled, understood completely before implementing is crucial if we are to succeed on what we hope to succeed with CBAM.
So fixing this CBAM loophole is about recognizing the difference between industrial scrap and end-of-life post-consumer scrap.
Which is shouldn't be that difficult as a starting point, but it has shown to be so far.